All right, welcome back to the Fray Podcast. My name is Austin Gregory, and I'm your host. And we are back with another episode of our hot take series. And in this hot take, I'm gonna take a kind of hard line on some things. We're just gonna dive in, and the title should probably already give you a kind of idea of where we're gonna go. But the hot take this episode is Christian nationalism is weak Christianity. I'm going to say it one more time. Christian nationalism is weak Christianity. That's the end of the hot take. Now, this hot take is going to need some unpacking, right? Because there's terms you don't maybe fully understand or know. There's going to be some resources I want to kind of point out. And then there's just a kind of overall layout that I feel like would be better to tackle on this one. I'm still riffing off of this hot take. So there's not a script like I've said in times past of, there's been episodes where I have a full-on script and it's like me reading a blog. The hot take series is me kind of riffing off of an idea. This one, though, is probably the one I've got the most notes with. And so there's kind of an overall blueprint or layout for where I want this episode to go. But I'm still kind of spitting off the top of my head. I don't know what I'm going to say next, and hopefully it all turns out well, you know what I mean? So the first thing is I just want to define terms of what is Christian nationalism, and I want to do it in a way that is fair and kind to people who would hold to a Christian nationalist view. So Christian nationalism, the best way I could kind of figure out a way to word it is an ideology that, and I'm kind of using the beginning of this phrase from a bunch of resources I found that gave definitions. But it's an ideology that seeks to merge the values of Christianity with public life in the public square, specifically in the way our government operates. And with that, it seeks to be a government that is operating within the bounds of what they would deem as godly. So it's this vision for a Christian nation of sorts, where it's okay to love your country and love Jesus, and it's okay to be very patriotic and hold to Christian values, whether it's in regards to family or justice or whatever. I mean, you can kind of start pulling the threads out of what all that would entail. But in short, just an ideology that seeks to merge the values of Christianity with how government operates and enforces its laws. Now, with defining that, I also wanted to talk about why people are attracted to it. And the first thing that I thought of was just that I think the reason people get attracted to Christian nationalism is because they grew up or they have been exposed to, or maybe they felt this tension of if you're like me, you grew up hearing faith and politics do not mix, and you bought into that maybe for a time, but you've come to terms with the fact that no, faith and politics should mix, because we all bring some type of faith or some type of preconceived notions of beliefs or a theology or philosophy of how the world should work to the table when we enter the public square. No one is neutral. No one is coming in with a blank slate into the public square. Everyone has their beliefs. And so, this is kind of the pushback people have with Zohran Mamdani, the mayor of New York, is he's coming in with Muslim beliefs. Whether he's admitting it or not, he has a framework for how he sees the world that is informed by his faith. And so Zohran is coming in with his faith as the foundation for everything that he's building his politics on. And Christian nationalists see that and say, yeah, we're going to do that too. We're not going to hold our faith to the side like some people have told us to. Instead, we're coming into the public square with our faith as a foundation, and we're going to be honest about it. Everyone comes to the table with a set of beliefs. We're just going to be the ones who are honest about it. Another reason I think people are attracted to it, and this may be a little bit more of a dig somewhat. It's not a positive reason, but I think one reason people are attracted to is this fear of conflict. they look out into the world and they see maybe someone like a Zoran, or they hear about some of these other people who have come from families who migrated to the U.S. and they don't hold Christian values, and they come from other nations with other beliefs or whatever it is, right? And their fear is that these people are bringing in ideas to our government and to our country that are over time going to start oppressing Christians, and they're going to oppress the good people who have built this country up. And that they sense that there's some persecution coming. And with this persecution coming, I think that rattles a lot of believers, because we haven't really had to deal with persecution. I wrote, we live in an age of a lot of peace and no persecution, so any slight against us raises our alarms that something has went wrong. We are like a house camera freaking out over the squirrel in our yard, and it's causing us to run outside with a gun. I think that's where the fear of conflict kind of naturally morphs into, is now any slight, any perceived sense that persecution could possibly be on the rise, or there might be a potential of it, it causes us to go to the other extreme, where now we got to build a wall. We got to build a fortress. I say wall not in reference to what Trump has done and build a campaign on, but we seek to build a wall, a fortress, a solitude, a place of solitude that can protect us from the evil that we believe may come. And I think a lot of this just comes down to, we've been very privileged in this country to have freedoms of belief and of speech, and we fear that many of those rights are going to be taken away with the influx of people of different cultures and religions coming in and getting high-ranking positions in office, and or even not even just people from other countries and beliefs, but people who are American through and through, but just they do not buy into the Christian value system. And so we see it as there's a potential that danger could be on the coming up on the shores, and we gotta brace ourselves for what's to come, because once it's here, and there's no turning back. The third thing is we don't want to be pushovers. I don't want to be a pushover. I remember in Sunday school, a Sunday school teacher talking about, like, yeah, you don't need to be a pushover, yada, yada, yada. And for some reason, I thought this was super messed up, and still do. And I'm like, yo, shut your mouth, lady. The Sunday school teacher said she was shocked that I wasn't a pushover. And I just looked at her and I was like, why would I be a pushover? Because I'm not a bully? No, like I'm not a bully, but I'm not letting people just run over me either. I think we want to be people known as people who can stand firm in tough times, but I think our definition of that has sometimes gotten lost, and this conversation shows that. But we don't want to be a pushover. We want to stand firm in our values. We want to be known as the Martin Luther type figures, and we want to be known as the Bonhoeffers, and we want to be people who, you look back in history, I think it's a Douglas Wilson quote where he says something like, history is written about, I wish I could remember it, but people write history about people who stand firm and lauds them for their courage. I don't remember what it is. You can probably listen. I think it's on Apologia. If you've ever listened to that podcast, it's in their intro, his quote. And I just think a lot of us want to be known in our families, in our communities, in our country, in history, as people who, when times got tough, we didn't back down. That we took our values so seriously that we stood up and we fought against whatever evil regime there was, and we didn't let evil take over, And so that's why I think people are generally attracted to it. We could probably come up with more reasons, But I think in general that's why people are attracted to it, or at least some thoughts I had about it. Coffee break. Now, I want to get into what are some problems with it. And I think the first thing is just Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world." You got to start there. Like, the kingdom he's ushering in Matthew is like it, and this is key. The gospel is literally like when you ask Jesus, "What is the gospel? What's the good news you're coming to bring?" He doesn't mention dying for your sins. It's always about him bringing in this kingdom of heaven on earth. And so with that, you have to then kind of define terms. What does this kingdom look like? Because the Israelites thought that there was a kingdom for sure. And they thought that the kingdom was the Messiah coming and taking out Rome. And, raising the Israelite people back up to a place of power and influence where Rome had been oppressing them. Jesus' message of this gospel of the kingdom completely went the opposite direction of what the Israelites were expecting, and which is partly why he was killed. You have literally a disciple of Jesus who he is I cannot think of the term, but he had bought into this idea that Jesus was going to be this type of revolutionary. And part of his sanctification journey is coming to terms with the fact that no, Jesus' way, this Messiah's way of bringing in the kingdom is not the way I thought it was. It's not going to be through violence or force. It's going to be this otherworldly way, because the kingdom is not of this world. It's not operating the way we would think a kingdom would operate. We would think a kingdom would operate by, building some blocks on top of each other and building a little castle and a fortress and building a solid army, and then we take out all the evil that's around us and we purify the people that's within us by invoking rules and value systems. Jesus' way of building the kingdom, though, has no walls, which is why it's grown so much. Is it's not limited to a specific type of person or place or thing or time in history. It's ever-reaching. It's global. It's multi-ethnic. And I think that scares people because that means you can't really control it, It's that congregation of believers that can kind of just be on the move constantly because they're not restricted to a certain place. If they need to be in Rome, they're in Rome. If they need to be in Babylon, they're in Babylon. Wherever God's calling them, that's where they are. And I think that's a key element that we keep missing in this conversation is Jesus said his kingdom is not of this world, meaning you need to stop trying to put Christianity in terms of this world. You need to stop trying to make it some type of Christian empire because you see the empires of the world. I think that's a huge temptation. We see the empires of the world. We feel like, they're so powerful. They got so much influence. Yeah, so do a lot of mega churches, bro. That doesn't mean we should be them, right? You look at mega churches and you say, wow, they got so much power and influence and they're taking over the city. Everyone's want to go there. Yeah, and they also got tons of sexual abuse scandals, bro. They also completely miss the point of what church is. They focused in on one specific leader and they missed about the community. Point being, I think we see the flashiness of the empires of the world and we're wanting some of that. Forgetting Jesus has no desire to be a part of that. He's doing something otherworldly. Another thing is, Jesus tells us persecution will come time and time again. He says, you will be hated because of me. Get ready. His whole thing of, hey, if you want to be my disciple, you need to take up your cross and follow me. He meant that. I think for a lot of us, we bought into this lie that, Jesus, he doesn't actually want you to face persecution. He doesn't want you to actually have to suffer for your faith. And he just wants to give you a life of peace and prosperity, Maybe not prosperity like prosperity gospel, but like he wants to give you peace. He wants to make Christianity easy for you. And what's happening is we're just in a time right now where some of us, our peace is being shaken. And we're we're panicking. We're not turning to God for sure, but we're panicking and we're putting God's name on it. We hear about the persecution that's to come, and instead what we do is we do what Peter did when Jesus was arrested. We pull out our sword and we're going on attack mode, right? Forgetting that Jesus, right after that, tells Peter, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Put that sword down. And he willingly goes away arrested. I think we forget the call to be a Christian is to become more like Jesus. And that means in everything he did. We are like cherry picking his lifestyle and saying, yeah, but like, I want to be like Jesus in the way he like pulled out the whips and ran through the temple, chasing out the money, the people in the temple who are, profiting off of the poor people. I want to be like that. But you don't want to be the Jesus who got arrested willingly. You don't want to be the Jesus who got whipped with the cat o' nine tails. You don't want to be the Jesus who got put on the cross, right? You don't want to be any of that. You want the resurrection. You don't want the cross. That shows a sign that you do not understand who Jesus is. You've completely bought into a different Jesus that is not the Jesus of the Bible, and you're going around beating people up who did buy into the real Jesus and are not buying into your panic. You think that buying into Christian nationalism makes you a stronger Christian. It makes you a weaker Christian because you're lowering yourself to the standards of the world as a way to move forward. And that's not how you move forward, bro. Anyways, a third one. I want to read this passage. It's from Matthew 24, verses 4 through 14, I believe. And this is from the CSB version. It says, Jesus replied to them, "Watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Messiah,' and they will deceive many. You're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you're not alarmed, because these things must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise up against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places, and all of these events are the beginning of labor pains. Then they will hand you over to be persecuted, and they will kill you. You will be hated by all nations because of my name. Then many will fall away, betray one another, and hate one another. False prophets will rise up and deceive many, because lawlessness will multiply. The love of many will grow cold, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. The good news of the kingdom will be proclaimed in all the world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." Jesus is very upfront about what's going to happen. Yes, we are in this time period of history where nation will rise up against nation, wars will start coming, famines, earthquake, evil will be abound, right? Our response to that should not be, "Oh my God, I gotta quiet the evil." No. Your response to that is not to build another nation. It's not to build some other kingdom and put Jesus' name on it. It is to be faithful to the kingdom Jesus is calling you to, which is, again, otherworldly. It's the kingdom not of this world. It operates in the upside down. And in that's going to transform the world. And it's going to require a lot of patience. It's going to require a lot of discretion on your part. It's going to require you to take time to really analyze what's all going on, because you're having to operate in a way that is not natural to you. Now, the kind of last point I want to make about this. I think Christian nationalism, it ignores the point of a book like Revelation, where John is writing to a group of churches who are seeing an oppressive empire grow up in its dominance. And yet his response is not just to build a Christian version, it's not just build a Christian version of that, but his response is, there is someone who has already overcome your oppressors, so take heart and find rest in him. The book of Revelation is written to a group of churches who have empires around them who are literally oppressing them. We're not being oppressed. They were being oppressed, right? Uses tiki torches, bro. Their Messiah's already been freaking murdered, right? They watched it. And These churches are being told from John, who's getting visions of what's actually taking place in like the unseen realm. And he's looking at these churches and he's saying, hey, don't grow cold. Remember your first love. Remember the Jesus you fell in love with. I think this is key. A lot of us during this time are forgetting the Jesus we fell in love with. We were forgetting the Jesus who loved the outsider. We're forgetting the Jesus who loved the outcast, who went to them. We were once that, and we forgot that. And now that we've forgotten that, we're looking at the outsiders, we're looking at the outcast, we're looking at the gay person, we're looking at the refugee or the immigrant or whatever it is, we're looking at the liberals, and we're saying, oh, God wants nothing to do with you. You should be locked up. You shouldn't be here. You have no place in what God's building in this country. Jesus didn't operate like that. He literally would have dinners, invite himself over to someone's house, and say, I want to eat with the tax collectors and sinners. Who do you think that is? Do you think it's freaking Jerry Falwell Jr.? No. Buddy, it is going to be your Zorons that he's inviting to that dinner table. It's going to be people in the IRS. That's who Jesus is inviting to the dinner table. He's inviting the person that you Christians are so freaking mad at constantly. You are putting your sin as not as bad as theirs. You are the religious hypocrites. You are the Pharisees. You are the people that were going around mad at Jesus because he's not the Messiah you wanted. And you're trying to build him into one that you do want. You want one who looks more Republican. You want one who has freaking red, white, and blue on his robe. And the problem is he's not. And you can't handle that because you didn't fall in love with the real Jesus. And if you did, you walked away from him. You need to come back. You need to come back to the real Jesus because what you bought into is a weak Christianity that's operating like the world, and it's going to produce the results the world produces. So my simple plea with this hot take that I got passionate about is Christian nationalism is weak Christianity. It's not strong Christianity. It's literally the guy freaking on roids, flexing his muscles at the gym, bowing up at people, but has never been in a fight in his life. I say that as someone who hasn't really been in a fight in his life. I ain't flexing, bro. You got me. Anyways, what a fun way to end. That's it for this hot take. Thank you guys for listening. Probably offended some people. I'm cool with it. I want to highlight some resources. Two of these are more about like history of how the evangelicals have been used for politics in a lot of recent history. First one, Jesus and John Wayne by Kristen Cobes Dumas. Fantastic book. It will... she's a Christian, so she's an insider if you're nervous. She really highlights a lot of what I grew up in, and it was really shocking. And it's a go-to. But the one I would actually recommend you go to before you go to that, if you're going to read any book, it's this book by Tim Alberta. His dad was a pastor, very conservative, and he watched his dad's church buy into Christian nationalism and like completely like go a different way. And it's not that his dad wasn't going to vote for Trump or anything like that. It's just his dad wasn't idolizing Trump and preaching Trump from the pulpit. And the next thing you know, that's all that happened in that church. And he just goes through and he just interviews all these guys who are some of the big names in Trump's administration and campaigning for him in churches, and he lets them speak for themselves. He's not trying to do a hit piece or anything like that, but he lets them speak for themselves. And it's amazing how many of them kept saying, I know what I'm doing is wrong, but we have to win. Wild. So I this might be one of my favorite books of all time. Another one, this one's a little more biting, but dude's friends with Mark Dever, so I feel like take that if you like Mark Dever's pretty conservative. it's a book. I don't know if Mark ever endorsed it or like wrote a thing for it, but it's one that it's a solid little book. He'll just kind of speak on a bunch of different cultural issues. Jesus versus Evangelicals by Constantine Campbell. Fantastic book. Maybe not fantastic book. It's just a good book. You know, it's interesting. It's fun. It's biting, and yeah, be a nice little book for you to dive into. Anyways, that's it for this episode of the podcast. Thank you for listening, and as always, stay tuned for next Thursday, and we'll have another episode because we are pumping them out, and hopefully by then my co-host will have put out an episode as well. You'll be hearing from Kobe if you haven't already soon, hopefully, and yeah, we are pumping these episodes out, son. So thanks for listening.